Hello, my maths group. I hope you're all well and ready for another week of home learning. Now, we've been concentrating on calculations for the last few weeks, and we're going to be moving on now to looking at fractions. And in particular, this week, we're going to be looking at comparing fractions. Now, comparing fractions is important because it allows you to see what portion of the whole amount you have got of something. And based on some questions that you may be asked to order fractions from smallest to largest or largest to smallest. And to be able to do that, you need to be able to compare them. So let's have a look at the first example. We have got four fractions here: a half, 5/8, 3/4 and 1/3. Now the first thing you've probably noticed is that they've all got different denominators. And one way to compare fractions is to change them all into the same denominator. But I like you to think mathematically. Now there's some things we can do beforehand to see if we need to change every fraction into the same denominator. So let's have a look at these ones. Now, one way I've taught you to compare fractions is to compare them to a half. Are there fractions which are below a half? Are there fractions that are a half? Are there fractions which are above a half? Are there fractions that are more than a whole? So let's have a look then. Well, I can see that my first one is exactly half. My second one, 5/8, that is more than a half. Now I know that because if it was 4/8, that would be a half. So that one I know already is bigger than a half. 3/4, again, that is bigger than a half. I know that because 2/4 would be a half. So already I know that a half is below these two fractions already. And then I get a third. Now I know a third is actually less than a half. So if I had to order these fractions without having to do anything apart from comparing to a half, I can see that 1/3 is my smallest fraction because it is below a half. I then know that half is my next fraction because these two fractions are above a half. Now, 3/4 and 5/8. Now you may know which fraction is next, but if you weren't too sure, this is when you could change each one of these into the same denominator. And to do that, you need to find a common denominator. Right? And luckily, I can see from here that my common denominator would be 8 because 4 is a multiple of 8. So 5/8 would stay the same, and if I changed this to 8, what have I done? I've multiplied 4 by 2. So I have to do 3 exactly the same. 3 multiplied by 2 is 6/8. So I can then see that my next smallest fraction is 5/8. And my biggest fraction is this one here. Now, because I've changed it to a different denominator, I need to write it in the form it was given in the first place. So 3/4. Now, I've managed to be able to order those fractions mathematically in the best way. Comparing to a half first to see if I know if any is the smallest or any is the biggest. And then, when needed to, converting fractions into the same denominator to compare. Let's have a look at another example then. 7/6, 2/5, 5/6, 3/7. Now, do you notice anything? That's good if you did. You may have noticed that 7/6 is going to be my largest fraction because it is greater than 1/2, and all my other fractions are less than a whole. Now, when talking about ordering them, I've already done one of them and I haven't really had to do much apart from think mathematically about it. And I'll have a look at this. 2/5, well I know that's less than a half. 5/6 is more than a half. 3/7 is less than a half. So my third biggest fraction would be 5/6. Now, I've got 2/5 and 3/7. Now, you may know which one is the smallest out of those two. If not, you're not too sure, then have a think about changing them to the same denominator to be able to work it out. So, we've got 2/5 and 3/7. Now, you need to find a common denominator. What common denominator is a multiple of both of those numbers? Now, if you're comparing just two fractions, if you're not too sure, a good way of doing that is just by multiplying 5 by 7, because then you'll know that the other number is a multiple of that number. So let's change those. 5 times 7 is 35. So both our denominators now are 35. How many times did I have to multiply 5 to get 35? Well, I had to multiply it 7 times. So I multiplied 2 by 7, which is 14. How many times did I multiply 7 to get to 35? Well, I multiplied it 5 times. What do I need to do with 3? I need to do exactly the same. So I need to multiply 3 by 5, which is 15. Now, we can clearly see now that 2/5 is the smallest fraction. So we write it in the given fraction, 2/5, and our next one is 3/7. Now, I like you to think mathematically, children. So when you're having a look at this week's work, think first, compare fractions to a half. Are there ones which are below, ones that are half, ones that are above, ones that may be whole? And then you'll be able to work out ordering fractions with the least amount of effort. Children, good luck. Look forward to seeing some of your work this week. If you're not too sure, again, refer back to the video or have a look online for extra support.